Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. I always knew I was not the favorite. No one ever said it aloud, and there was nothing you could chart or measure. It was a feeling that settled into my bones in childhood and never left. It was in the way my parents looked at me compared to my sister. It was in their tones and their choices, in small moments and large ones, the constant, quiet reinforcement that I was somehow secondary. My older sister, Whitney, was the sun. She could do no wrong. She absorbed the light while I existed in her shadow. Growing up inside that weather system, I learned the landscape by heart. When Whitney brought home an A, her test would be framed and hung in the living room like a museum piece. When I brought home an A, I got a brief smile, and then the conversation drifted back to Whitney's next achievement. For my 10th birthday, my parents wheeled out a bicycle in my favorite color. My heart lifted until they said, "We got this for you and Whitney to share. Since her birthday is later, you can ride it first." It was never my bicycle. It was our bicycle given on my birthday. That was the pattern. The pattern followed us into adulthood. After college, I landed my first design job and called my mother, breathless with excitement. "That is nice, honey," she said, distracted. "Did I tell you Whitney is up for a promotion? Her boss loves her. We are thinking of having a dinner to celebrate." Whitney did not get the promotion. They had the dinner anyway. I did not get a dinner. I got a "that is nice." And yet, I did not hate her. It is hard to hate the sun when you have learned to live in its light and heat. I resented the pedestal, but she was still my sister. I told myself our parents' choices were not her fault. I thought adulthood would level us. I thought we would find our own lives, our own circles, and begin to orbit separate suns. I believed meeting the man who truly saw me would create a world of my own, a place protected from old family dynamics. The man I chose, my husband of 5 years, was Jalen. He was handsome and attentive, the person who held me when I felt small, the one who whispered that he saw me. 2 years ago, everything I thought was steady fell apart. It was an early autumn evening, air crisp enough to smell of leaves and promises. We were driving to my parents' house for dinner. Jalen drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand resting on my knee, humming along with a 1970s rock song on the radio. The gesture was familiar, but it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. "You all right, love?" he asked, glancing over. His brow was furrowed with concern that felt genuine. "You have been quiet since we left the house." I forced a smile that felt brittle. "Just thinking. You know how I get before family dinners. It is like putting on armor." He squeezed my knee. "I know, but tonight is a good night. We are celebrating. Smile, be happy for Whitney, and we will be out of there in a few hours. Then it is just you and me." He was right about the occasion. My parents had invited us to share a special announcement. Whitney was pregnant. She and her husband, Rodney, had been trying for a while. I knew how much she wanted this. I was sincerely happy for her. I had spent the previous weekend choosing a soft hand-knit baby blanket and a small stuffed elephant. Even so, the familiar knot sat heavy in my stomach, the one that told me I would always be second best, even inside my own happiness for her. The house smelled of pot roast and vanilla candles. The conversation, from the moment coats were hung, revolved around Whitney. My parents glowed with a blinding pride. They spoke about how beautiful she looked and how easily motherhood would come to her. My father was already musing aloud about college funds and legacy. Rodney looked proud and a little stunned by the force of my parents' joy. Whitney, at the center, absorbed it all with soft smiles and a protective palm over her still flat belly. I smiled at the right moments, laughed when it was expected, congratulated her again when she opened my gift. Jalen kept his arm around me, chatted with my father about football, and made me feel like we were a team. He was my anchor in waters I had never learned to navigate without bracing myself. After dessert, when cake plates were stacked and coffee poured, the room felt warm and slow. I excused myself to the upstairs bathroom to breathe. When I returned, the house was quieter. Jalen and Rodney were in the living room, faces washed blue by the television. I walked past the kitchen and heard my parents' voices. I should have kept walking. I did not. My father's voice was low and gravelly with disappointment. He promised it would not happen again. He gave me his word. My mother's voice sliced through the quiet. "It does not matter. What matters is that we cannot ever let Avery find out. You know how she is. She is sensitive. It would destroy her." My breath halted. What would destroy me? My father sighed, weary. I know. It was a mistake. A lapse in judgment. People make them. The important thing is that Whitney managed to get pregnant. This baby is a blessing. It will fix everything. You will see. A mistake. Whitney's mistake. A mistake I could never know about. The pieces slid together with brutal certainty. They were not talking about a random misstep. They were talking about Whitney sleeping with Jalen. My Jalen. I stood in the hall, pressed against the cool patterned wallpaper, the grandfather clock ticking like a hammer inside my head. My parents knew. They had decided together to shield Whitney and to manage me. Their golden child would remain untarnished. The rest of the night is a blur. I remember stepping into the living room and hearing the cheerful noise of the game, as if from underwater. I said something about a headache. I avoided looking at my parents, at Whitney, and especially at Jalen, who asked if I needed anything. I shook my head and left. I drove without direction, city lights smearing into yellow and white strokes. I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store and stared at the sliding doors under humming fluorescent lights. Memory is unkind when you are bleeding out. I remembered driving that same road a year earlier, Jalen tucking a strand of my hair behind my ear and saying he was the luckiest man in the world. Was he already sleeping with my sister then? The thought sent a hot wave up my throat. I stepped out into the night air and walked aimlessly under the lights. A young woman pushed a cart with a sleeping toddler. It looked like a life I thought I was building. It felt like a mirage. My phone buzzed. Jalen, hey, you okay? You left fast. Call me. I let the screen go dark. How do you ask your husband whether he slept with your sister? I drove home. The house felt alien. Every frame on the wall, every piece of furniture we had chosen together, looked like a prop. I bypassed our bed and lay down in the guest room, fully clothed, staring into the dark. I did not cry. There was nothing left to come out. My life was over in the form it had taken. I did not know what to do next. For 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own house. I rotated between the guest bed, my small office, and the living room. Jalen hovered at the doorway, trying to breach the barricade. Avery, what is wrong? He asked, voice soft. You barely speak to me. Did something happen at your parents' house? I am just tired, I said, eyes on my laptop. Work is intense. Every time I looked at him, my mind forced images I had never seen and could not erase. I am a graphic designer. My job requires imagination and focus. Both evaporated. I stared at blank screens while messages piled up. Hi, Avery, checking on the proofs. Avery, the deadline is Friday. One night, I slid a frozen pizza into the oven and forgot it. The smoke alarm scream filled the house, and I stood watching it burn, feeling a startling kinship with charred pepperoni. My best friend, Nadine, called. Hey, I have not heard from you. Everything okay? I let it go to voicemail. I typed out a message about work and deleted it. How could I wrap words around a world built on lies? For 14 days, I moved through fog. When it finally began to lift, something colder and sharper took its place. Anger arrived, not loud or hot, but clear and precise as glass. I did not want closure. I did not want apologies. Words would be meaningless poured over rot. I wanted them to feel the depth of what they had done to me. I would not confront them the way people expect women to confront, tears, accusations, pleading. I would not give them a scene they could later reframe as hysteria. I would give them the truth in a form they could never escape. The opportunity presented itself like a cruel gift. My mother called on a Tuesday morning, her voice bright. Avery, darling, how are you? I feel like I have not talked to you in ages. I am fine, Mother, I said, careful and even. Just busy with work. Wonderful. Whitney and I had the most marvelous idea. Her baby shower is in a few weeks, and who better to organize it than her wonderfully creative sister? You are so good at these things. The audacity sucked the air out of my lungs. She wanted me to plan the celebration for a baby likely conceived in betrayal. It was grotesque. It was perfect. Of course, I said after a beat, softening my tone until it sounded like honey. I would be honored to do it for Whitney. Anything for my big sister. Oh, she will be so happy, my mother gushed. She will remember this day forever. Yes, I whispered. She will. That night, I began. I waited until Jalen's breathing down the hall grew slow and deep. I slid out of the guest bed and padded to the kitchen. His phone sat on the charger. I knew his passcode. We used to say that trust was our foundation. The irony stung, but it did not stop my hands. I checked his messages and call logs. Nothing. He was careful. He was too careful. I remembered advice from an information technology friend, Maurice. Nothing is ever truly gone. I checked his cloud connections, the old backups, the corners where digital dust gathers. It took time. Then I found a folder labeled Work Projects Q3. It was painfully dull as a title, which made it suspicious. I opened it. Photographs spilled out. There were dozens. A coffee shop, a park bench, a car interior with two faces too close. Some were innocent at first glance. Others were unmistakable. I felt sick, but I did not stop. I downloaded everything into a hidden folder. The timestamps ran back more than a year. This was not one night or even a handful. It was a map of repeated choices. The next night, I turned to his laptop. I found deleted messages resurrected by the right queries, emails they forgot to purge, social media exchanges archived by habit. They wrote about me like a scheduling problem. Avery is working late, he typed. My place, she replied. That simple. That cruel. I kept gathering, saying nothing, becoming efficient in my silence. The most damning proof was buried deepest. Screenshots of a group text between Whitney, my mother, and my father. You need to be more careful, my mother wrote. Rodney is getting suspicious, and Avery does not need to know. It will only upset her. My father chimed in. Keep quiet for everyone's sake. No more drama. Whitney sent the entire thread to Jalen with. Told you my parents are on our side. Nothing to worry about. My parents were not merely aware. They were participants. They had coached their favored child and my husband through deception and told each other it was for the best. Inheritance appeared in one message like an oily sheen. Your image is most important, my mother wrote. You have a family to think of now. The inheritance is complicated enough without a messy divorce. Whitney replied with a smile emoji. I stared until the screen blurred. Whatever last remnant of love I had for my family hardened and cracked. I saved everything in multiple places, encrypted the archive, and hid a small drive inside a book on my shelf. I was not going to be reckless. I would be thorough. I would wait for the exact right stage, the one my mother had set with such confident cheer. The day of the shower was bright and mild, a perfect mockery of what it contained. I threw myself into the planning with clinical precision. The theme was a new chapter, with paper flowers and open books, miniature banners strung across the room, and soft linens. It was tasteful and beautiful. It was entirely false. I was the perfect hostess at the front door, greeting relatives and family friends who told me how kind I was to do so much for my sister. You are such a good sister, Avery, an aunt said, patting my arm. Whitney is lucky. I would do anything for her, I replied, managing the smile that tasted like ash. Across the room, Whitney sat on a wide chair draped in a quilt, queen-like and comfortable. She laughed, opened small gifts, and rested a hand on her belly. Jalen hovered nearby, performing the part of attentive brother-in-law. He found me arranging appetizers. Great party, love, he whispered. You did a wonderful job. I gave him a tight smile and walked away. My parents moved through the room like crowned hosts, their faces rehearsed into proud grandparent serenity. They had no idea they were floating above a fault line. They saw me as I had always been to them, agreeable, quiet, easily managed. They thought I knew nothing. That belief was my advantage. I kept busy with trays and glasses, adding gifts to the display table. Each small pair of shoes, each soft blanket, was another sharp breath. This day should have been joyous. Instead, it was an execution. My heart beat hard and steady, not with nerves, but with the electric peace that comes when you commit to the truth and stop looking back. After the cake was cut and hands were sticky with buttercream, my mother caught my eye and nodded as if to say, now. I stepped forward. If I could have everyone's attention for a moment, I said. Conversations fell away. I have one more gift for Whitney. It is special. It is from the heart. I lifted a large box wrapped in silver paper with a white silk bow and carried it to my sister. Oh, Avery, you should not have, Whitney said, smiling. You have already done so much. But I had to, I said, the smile on my face tightening at the edges. This one is just for you. She tore the paper and opened a simple photo box. She looked back at me, puzzled, and then lifted the lid. On top lay an 8x10 photograph of Whitney and Jalen kissing in his car. Her smile faltered, catching and dying. Her hands trembled. She shuffled the stack and found more. Hotel lobbies, parks, hallways, moments that left nothing to interpretation. The closest guests leaned in. A murmur rippled through the room. Rodney leaned forward with a puzzled smile that vanished as his eyes focused. His face went blank and then thunderdark. I was not finished. As whispers rose, I walked to the wide windows. Actually, I said clearly, I think this gift should be shared. I pulled the draw cord. The decorative curtains dropped, revealing a gallery I had mounted earlier. Enlarged photographs arranged on foam boards. The room gasped in unison, as if the air had fled. There they were in oversized proof. In the car at the hotel, with expressions no brother-in-law and sister-in-law should ever wear at each other. Whitney's face went pale. She looked to me, lips parting soundlessly. My parents' practiced smiles cracked. My mother reached out a hand, as if to stop words not yet spoken. I did not stop. For months, I said, my voice level. My sister Whitney has been sleeping with my husband, Jalen. This was not a single lapse. It was an affair. I gestured to the evidence. The best part, my parents knew and helped her hide it. They chose their golden child and managed me because they decided I could not bear the truth. Eyes ricocheted between me, the photographs, and my family. Rodney made a sound between a laugh and a sob. You traitor, he said to Whitney, voice breaking. He did not look back at her. He strode to the door and slammed it hard enough to shake a frame off the wall. Someone cried out. The room dissolved into clusters of shock and anger as people tried to reconcile their assumptions with the images on the walls. Underneath the noise, I felt a quiet calm overtake me. The secret was gone. The truth stood upright with its face in the light. I picked up my purse and walked out. I did not need to watch the collapse. They could choke on the truth without me to witness it. I drove to a modest motel, checked in under my own name, turned off my phone, and slept for 10 hours. For a few days, silence held. It was a relief. Then a number I did not recognize lit my screen. It was Ayanna, one of Whitney's closest friends. Avery, it is Ayanna, she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and disgust. I had to call. I am so sorry for what Whitney did. You need to know what happened after you left. It was a war zone. She walked me through the aftermath. Rodney's parents were there, and once they understood the photographs, the room erupted. Rodney's father, a large, imposing man, marched up to Whitney and called her a word Ayanna would not repeat. My father tried to intervene. She is pregnant. You cannot speak to her like that, he said. Rodney's father laughed, short and cold. Your dear daughter is a disgrace, he answered. My father lunged, and Rodney's father laid him flat with one punch. The women fought too. Rodney's mother screamed at my mother, who screamed back, calling Rodney's father a gorilla. Guests pulled them apart as Rodney's mother yanked a handful of my mother's hair. The scene would have been absurd if it were not my life tearing in public. Ayanna's voice lowered. Whitney has always been self-involved, but I never imagined this. You need a strong divorce attorney. Do not let them steamroll you. A small part of me regretted not staying to watch the edifice crumble. A larger part knew leaving was the only way to step into my own life. The first thing I did Monday morning was call the most relentless divorce attorney I could find. That evening, I went home. Jalen's car sat in the driveway. I unlocked the door. He was on the couch, his face a study in shame and panic. Avery, he began, standing. We need to talk. No, I said, my voice like ice. I am calling my attorney tomorrow. I want you out of this house tonight. I packed his clothes, books, and electronics into trash bags with efficient hands and set them on the lawn. He did not argue. He loaded his car. He left. I filed for divorce the next day. It moved quickly and cleanly. But the story did not end there. Weeks later, Ayanna called again, her voice vibrating with anger. She had followed her own suspicion. It turned out her husband had also been cheating on her, with Whitney. When Ayanna confronted him, he did not deny it. He drove to Whitney's new apartment and punched Jalen in the face. Jalen finally collected what he had dodged at the party. Jalen moved out of Whitney's place immediately. He could not bear the idea that she might have betrayed him the way he betrayed me. The irony was thick enough to taste. My divorce finalized smoothly. The house sold. We split the proceeds. I took my half and felt, for the first time in months, the ground under my feet. The last chapter arrived a few months later, after Whitney's baby girl was born. A paternity test was required as part of Rodney's divorce and custody terms. In an ending that would have seemed too on the nose in fiction, Jalen was not the father. The baby's biological father was Ayanna's ex-husband. He wanted nothing from Whitney beyond the obligations the law required. I did not blame him. Alone with a newborn, Whitney moved back into our parents' house. The golden child returned to a tarnished throne, wrapped in the protective gauze our parents have always drawn around her. As for me, I took my half of the house money and left. I moved to a small city a few hours away, a place where no grocery cashier or neighbor knows my history. I rented a quiet 2-bedroom with a small balcony that drinks the morning sun. I accepted a position at a small marketing firm and focused on the steadiness of deadlines. I made new friends slowly, the kind of friends who ask questions and actually listen to the answers. My life grew smaller and, in that smallness, peaceful. I thought often about family and the forms it can take. I realized blood is not a guarantee of care or safety. Family is respect that does not evaporate when tested, trust that does not require you to be blind, safety that is not conditional on your silence. I thought about inheritance, not the kind my mother fretted over in text messages, but the kind that travels invisibly through gestures and choices. I decided to refuse the inheritance my parents tried to hand me, the legacy of being second best, the training in swallowing my own voice. My parents did not call. Whitney did not write. Relief arrived with that silence. There are no words that could repair what they broke on purpose. Some evenings, the sky goes rose gold outside my balcony, and the neighborhood is quiet except for a dog's bark in the distance. I make a cup of coffee and sit on a folding chair and let the sun rest on my face. I find I do not replay the party anymore. I do not replay the gallery or the gasp. I think of the baby sometimes, innocent and bright, and hope she learns a different definition of love than the one the adults around her taught. I also think of that afternoon when the curtains fell in a rented room and the truth faced people who had believed themselves immune to it. I did not shout. I did not plead. I simply put the facts where everyone could see them and left them to live inside the world they had made. In the quiet of my new life, I feel no rage. What I feel is something cleaner, a satisfaction that does not require cruelty to exist. I gave them a gift, and they will carry it for the rest of their lives. Not flowers or blankets or silver rattles, but the unvarnished truth, framed and undeniable. It is the only present that was ever mine to give. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.